You're here listening to the Soul Expansion Podcast because intuitively you know there's more to life. There's something more here. And truthfully, we access that something more in our own bodies, in our own souls. We have all the wisdom we need. And when we can access this within ourselves, business, money, impact, and every area of our life becomes so much more easeful, relaxed, and abundant. My name is Kristen Kosinski, and I'm here as your guide and your host, but this is your journey, so let the journey begin. Welcome back to the Soul Expansion Podcast. This episode is going to be a little more nuanced, a little more in-depth. We're going to be talking about some things that may be triggering to you if you've ever been in a codependent relationship. So if that is something that you do not wish to listen to or participate in, feel free to pause this podcast, go to the next episode or one of our previous episodes, and protect yourself in whatever way you need to. However, if you have been in a codependent relationship and you have enough distance from it to think about it objectively, or at least from an energy of curiosity instead of deep trauma, I highly recommend you listen to this episode with an open heart and an open mind, because as someone who was in a codependent relationship in college, this is something I wish I had known much sooner in my business journey. Something I've come to understand with the way we operate and our unconscious patterns is, the way we do one thing is often the way we do most things. And so if there's a history in your own personal relationship history of codependency, then you may see similar patterns show up in business. And it's not something to feel bad about or to get mad about or to, in other ways, worry about, but it is something to be aware of and to get curious about. So if you feel like you're in a good headspace to receive some information about how this might be playing a role in your business, then continue listening. And if not, no hard feelings. Tune into one of the other episodes. We have so many episodes that you can learn from. At the time I'm recording this, there's at least 67 episodes available to you, and I'm not stopping anytime soon. So there should be tons of other content if this content doesn't feel good or safe for you to listen to right now. So, codependency, big scary word, right? I don't know what your familiarity with this word means, but I'm going to go ahead and define it for the purposes of this podcast episode. This may be a completely different definition than what a mental health clinician would say codependency is or means, but that's not really my area of expertise or anything I am interested in, claiming to know anything about. I'm only going to speak from my own personal experience. So the way I am defining codependency for the purposes of this podcast episode and what I'm going to share here is very simple. It's depending on something outside of you to meet your needs. So I'm going to say that again. Depending on something outside of you to meet your needs. And this goes for physical needs, emotional needs, any sort of need as a human being that we can experience. If you are depending on something outside of you to meet your needs, then there is the potential that there could be like a codependency pattern there. Now, the caveat here is there are things that we receive from outside that allow us to have our needs met. But the difference is receiving freely versus depending on that thing in order to feel enough. So let's get into some examples because I think that'll just kind of help paint the picture. So the way this first showed up for me in business was what I call the doing to receive pattern. And so what this felt like for me was I couldn't receive unless I did something. And in my case, it was I couldn't receive unless I did so much that I was completely exhausted and burnt out, and then I could receive. So I was dependent on the doing to feel good enough to receive. Do you see where the codependency comes in? So it's not that doing is not required in my business. I do have to do things in my business, like record this podcast. But I was dependent on a certain amount of doing, proving to myself that I was good enough to then receive. So there was this attachment to the things I was doing, proving that I was worthy enough to receive money, clients, opportunities, etc. Another way this showed up for me after I started my healing journey, but before I was, at this level of embodiment within myself, was I had this pattern of suffering to receive. So for me, I could only receive after, this was at a season in my business, I could only receive after I had suffered enough to feel utterly broken and like a victim. And then finally, I would surrender and I would request that my needs could be met, and then I could receive. All of this was unconscious, by the way. It sounds like very dramatic coming from like an aware and awake state, but it's what I was experiencing, but it was all happening unconsciously. So I didn't know that I was in a suffering to receive pattern until I got out of it, if I'm being honest. And that's how these patterns work, which is, truthfully why I wanted to bring this topic to the podcast, because sometimes you can hear something in someone else's story that makes you think a little deeper about what you're going through. And that can provide some deep clarity, which then allows you to awaken to some unconscious patterns that you might be running in. So there was doing to receive, there was suffering to receive. Another way codependency showed up in my business was I attached a lot of meaning to marketing, sales, and social media metrics. And I made those things mean, AKA I was dependent on them to know if I could make my money. So here's how this played out in real time. I would pull up, for example, my Instagram stories. And I would say to myself, oh shit, only, and I'm saying only from like a scarcity lens, but from an abundant lens, it was actually a lot. But I would say, oh shit, only 40 people viewed my story so far. That means I can't make any money today because not enough people are watching me, right? Like I had all of this like deep association with the metrics I was seeing on social media and making them mean, and honestly, like placing my worth on what they were saying, right? Like I was in such a scarcity lack mindset where if I saw, oh, only 40 people viewed my stories, then my default belief, my default energy, my default state was, I'm not going to be able to sell. I'm not going to be able to make money today. I'm not going to be able to sell out my program, whatever it was. And so I was deeply dependent on the external metrics to make me feel validated and good enough. And you may be listening to this and thinking to yourself, well, duh, it matters what the metrics are because more eyeballs equals more money. And yes, there's some truth to that. But the energy shift, what feels different, the energy shift is instead of looking at, oh, only 40 people watched the thing, therefore I don't feel validated and good enough to receive money today. The shift is, oh, that's interesting. 40 people are watching my stories. Oh, well, that doesn't matter. I know deep in my bones that I'm still a match for money. I know deep in my soul that I can still receive today. I know so deeply that I can still, receive whatever it is I'm calling in to my business because I already feel good enough. But when I was in the pattern, I was dependent on the social media metrics to feed my ego's need for validation so that I could feel good enough. If more people were watching me, I felt more good enough. So I was deeply dependent on the social media metrics. And maybe you identify yourself in this pattern. And so the shift happens when we feel good enough regardless of the metrics. And it actually causes more people to want to be in our energy because we're not dependent on the external for the validation. We are self-validating. We decide for ourselves that we are good enough. And then you can feel that energy, right? Like you can feel when someone is deeply okay with their being, when someone feels deeply good enough as is, when someone knows that they're okay and they're like sure of themselves, they're connected to their heart, they know that they're good enough. You can feel the difference between that and a reach for validation. And it's subtle, but it's felt on the energetic channels, right? So when we're in this state of being dependent on the external to make us feel good enough, or what I'm defining as codependency in business and with money, when we're dependent on the external to feel good enough, we're going to naturally be in a constant chase in our business. We're going to be in the hustle. We're going to be in the doing to receive. We're going to be in the workaholic pattern because the need is never being met, right? And that's the vicious cycle that comes from codependency. We're reaching for the need to be met. We get a little hit of it being met, right? We get that dopamine hit of like, ooh, okay, we got 100 people watching the stories today. Ooh, that feels good, right? We get the little hit. And then the next day, if it's 20 people watching your stories or whatever, metric you're using to attach your worth to, then it's like a big fucking crash. And who wants to be in that up and down cycle? No one. And as you can imagine, when you're in that up and down cycle, when you're in that chase for that next dopamine hit, you're in this cycle of never enough, never enough, never enough. You get a little hit of dopamine and you feel good enough for maybe a day, maybe a couple hours, and then you come crashing back down. How do you get out of that cycle? You have to start doing the work to feel good inside your own body. My voice cracked. My voice cracked on that because it's such deep stuff, and it's stuff we don't want to do. But if you're hearing yourself in some of the examples I'm sharing, I truly hope you do this work. So where does the shift happen, and what does it look like as you start to heal and process some of these patterns? Well, you start to feel good most days instead of just a few days, right? Before I noticed this pattern within myself, I felt bad most of the time because I wasn't getting my dopamine hit. And so when you start to meet your own needs, you start to get to this place where you feel good most of the time. Another shift I noticed when I worked on some of these codependency patterns in business for myself was I was able to show up with more of a detached energy and truly just serve my community and my audience because I wasn't seeking validation from them. Here's another way unconsciously codependency can show up in your business. If you ever record something and you're I'm let's say you're doing a live broadcast or even recording a podcast like I'm doing right now. If you're recording that thing with the intention to get a sale, it's a slightly different energy than just recording the thing to record the thing to share with your community, to teach, to educate, to inspire, to empower, right? It's a slightly different energy. And you can kind of feel it. There are some podcasts where I recorded where I know I was in that energy now because I have different awareness now. And if I were to go back and listen, I'd be like, yep, I'm reaching for that sale. Yep, I'm reaching for that validation. Yep, I'm reaching for that feeling of good enough. And now, I've been doing this work long enough to where I know, okay, I'm not ready to record a podcast if I don't feel good enough. I just am not ready. I'm not ready to show up on social media if I don't feel good enough yet, right? And it is a process for me because I do have a lot of worthiness wounds, but it is so worth your time. Oh my God, is it worth your time? Not only do you feel better just as a human, but you get better results in your business when you feel good enough. And that feeling of good enough has to come from the inside. It's this deep feeling in your body that nothing is missing, that no part of you is unlovable or needs to be rejected or hidden from view. This unconditional love and acceptance of yourself. This feeling of I'm human and I'm flawed and it's okay. This feeling of I'm just going to share my heart and it will be enough. This feeling of the right people will hear what I have to say. I don't have to force it. I don't have to push. I don't have to reach. I can just be here. I can be me. And that is enough. I can be me and that is enough. I wrote this affirmation on my stories a couple days ago. Maybe it was like a week ago. And it was, I am who I am and who I am is enough. I am who I am and who I am is enough. When you're in a codependency pattern in your business, there's this subtle energy. It may be tiny, it may be massive. But for me, it was often this very subtle energy of, I'm not quite good enough yet. And that not quite good enough yet, or that I'm not good enough until energy creates not good enough results over and over and over again in your business, in your money, in your social media audience, everything. But when you shift into, I am good enough now, I am already good enough now, I am who I am, and who I am is enough, and you feel all of your needs being met in your own body, your need for love, you feel that you love you, you feel that you validate you, you feel that you celebrate you, you feel that you feel proud of you, you feel that you meet your own physical needs for nourishment and water and exercise and play and pleasure. When you're meeting all of your own needs as much as you possibly can, then you feel enough. Then you feel like there's extra to give to others, right? I've talked about this. I don't know where I've talked about this. I've talked about this in different places, I guess. This process of pouring from an empty cup or like a half empty cup versus pouring from an overflowing cup. If you're pouring from a state of not enough, then you're going to run out. Guaranteed. There's no way you cannot run out. So you're going to see this constant phenomenon of there's never enough, there's never enough, there's never enough. But it's because you have an empty cup or a half empty cup. But if you love yourself and you meet your own needs and you fill yourself up to the state of not only am I enough, but now I am overflowing with love, joy, excitement, inspiration, passion, a desire to serve others. When you pour from an overflowing cup, you never run out as long as you're continuing to maintain, right? And so codependency in business or with money to me feels like you're pouring from like a half empty cup, from a not enough cup over and over and over again. So you're getting not enough and you're running out over and over and over again. So when we are able to shift and love ourselves and meet our own needs and instead start to pour from this overflowing cup, then there's always more to give. And we don't need anything outside of ourselves to fill up our cup. Our cup is already overflowingly full. So there's nothing missing. We don't need anything else to prove to ourselves that we are enough. We know in our heart, in our soul, in our bones that we are enough. And if you're hearing this and you're feeling into this and you're like, I can't feel that yet. I really want to feel good enough, but it's not happening in my body yet. I would encourage you, get into Soul Expansion membership. We have months where we talk about self-love. We have months where we do this worthiness work. And we have basically every healing is designed to help you feel worthy, help you feel empowered, help you feel good. So don't go through this alone. If you're listening to this episode, you're hearing yourself in some of the things I'm sharing, and you're feeling into this idea of being good enough now, and it doesn't feel possible for you, don't put this off. Get into Soul Expansion membership. We have the resources and the support there for you, and will help you get to this state of feeling good enough in your body, in your heart, in your soul, in your being. Because then when you're in that state, everything you put out there is saturated with this energy of good enough, of overflow, of abundance, of love, of joy, of passion. And that shit's contagious. That shit builds a movement. That shit builds a brand. That shit attracts money like wildfire. I don't know if that's an appropriate metaphor, but it does. So let's do the worthiness work together. So if you're interested in joining the membership, head to mysoulexpansion.com. But either way, if you can't join the membership right now for whatever reason, or if you're not feeling ready to join the membership, one thing I would say about that is you never feel ready to do deeper work. You never feel ready to take a leap of faith. So just know that. And if you're like, I want to join, but I don't feel ready, just give it a try. The worst thing that can happen is you spend $333 and maybe you decide it's not for you. But if you're like on the edge and you're like, I think I want to join, I don't know if I'm ready, just join, jump in and see it, see the community, see the healing, see what you like, see what you don't like. And you can always cancel after the 3rd month. But the other thing I would say about that, if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm not sure I can join this membership yet, which I totally get, right? Sometimes our own process for feeling ready for deeper changes takes time. What I would say is take a few moments today or tomorrow to journal or meditate on, what if nothing was missing? What if I was already good enough now? What then? And just see what comes through. I hope you like this episode. We did get a little deeper. We did get a little darker today. So I hope you're okay with that. I hope you got something out of this. I would love to hear from you. Please write a review. Hello. I love you so much. Write us a podcast review. I want to hear your feedback. I want to know what you love, what you don't love. I want to know all the things. Reviews are like podcast medicine, right? For a podcaster, like I see a review and I'm like, yes, this is not just going out into the ether. Like people are listening, people are learning, people are growing with me. So your reviews truly mean the world to me. So write a review if you get the chance. And you probably know by now, we give you a free gift when you screenshot your review and you send it to support@KristenKaczynski.com. We give you free access to the Work Less, Make More, The Vibe Masterclass, which at the time I'm recording this, it's $44, but I think we're going to raise it to $99. So you get like this $99, 3 hours worth of content, like this masterclass and this deepening and integration call. You get all of this content, 3 hours worth of content for free just for writing a podcast review. So I would love to give you that free gift. So if you feel called to write a review and share some feedback, definitely take a few moments, screenshot it, and send it to support@KristenKaczynski.com. All right, that's all I have for you today. If you want to tune in to our next episode, we're going to shift out of kind of like this dark night of the soul, codependency, deep, dark patterns in the unconscious. And we're going to talk about going from powerless to empowered. So we're going to shift into this sexy, juicy, empowered energy again. And I can't wait to share all of that content with you in our next episode. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I will talk to you soon. Love you. Bye. Thank you for listening to the show today. Thank you for being a loyal listener. If you've listened more than once, I really appreciate your time, your focus, your energy, and your attention. And so it is my heartfelt request that if you got something out of this episode, please write us a review, rate us, tell us exactly what you want to say, speak from the heart, speak from your soul. No review is too short or too long or anything that's too much or not good enough. It's all good. It's all good. We really love and appreciate your feedback. It just helps us make the show better and better, and it helps us get the show out to more people. As a reward for your time and energy writing a review, just take a screenshot of it before you hit submit and email it to us at support@KristenKaczynski.com. And we will give you free access to my Work Less, Make More, The Vibe Masterclass and Integration Deepening Call. This is over 3 hours of content that was recorded in 2022, early 2022. On my website, I currently charge money for it. I don't remember what we priced it at, but it's not currently for free anywhere else unless you write a podcast review, screenshot that review, and send us an email. So the email address is support@KristenKaczynski.com. I would love to gift you this free gift for your time and energy being a listener and writing a review. So if you have a few moments right now, I would really appreciate your words, your feedback, your shares, and your love. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. I so appreciate you. And I'll talk to you soon.